You are now listening to Highly Inappropriate.
Hello, I'm Matt, and again, you are listening to Highly Inappropriate. My buddy over here to my left is Mike. You want to say hi, buddy?
Hey, what's up?
And we decided to bring a special guest on. When me and Mike Brett talked about starting this podcast, we want to have a revolutionary on. One of the guys who helped get me into this industry a little bit and wanted to do a podcast and radio. And unfortunately, Nigel couldn't be on here, so we asked Hammer to be on the podcast.
Shocking! Nigel's unavailable.
Yeah, right.
Huh. Interesting how that happens.
You know what pisses me off about this is, we went to Vegas, every year. Well, I made it to one trip, and it was supposed to be the Hammer Nigel trip to Vegas, and Nigel never came.
We went 6 times to Vegas.
Oh, my God.
6. Not 1, not 3, 6. And Nigel went 0 times.
So he's never been.
No. Well, I mean, he might have been to Vegas, but he hasn't been on the official Hammer and Nigel trip.
But he's in California right now.
Yeah, he went out there with some buddies, and they were watching the Masters, and they were all doing whatever the hell they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's got time for those trips, but he could never make time to go to Vegas, basically for free with the Hammer and Nigel show.
How do you turn down a Vegas trip? I don't get that.
I'm beginning to think that you should probably change the name to that trip.
Well, our producer, Brad, BS, the guy that kind of ran the show, he went every trip with us. It was basically Brad and I that organized the whole thing. So people thought that Brad, who looks a little bit like a fatter version of Ricky Gervais, was actually Nigel. And, if you know anything about Nigel, it's a compliment because he's what the kids call fat.
Yeah.
So it worked out nicely for him, I guess. I don't know.
That's PH fat.
Right.
PHAT.
For those that don't know.
So you can't come and drink with your buddies in Vegas, but you can go out and watch the Masters with, I guess we're not his friends. That's kind of what he's saying. We're just business partners.
Well, I'm good with that. I really don't want to be his friend. I spend enough time with him in the studio.
He smells, he's fat.
Yeah, and man, he's just the kind of guy that you can only take in small doses. I can't stand to be around him, but for that very reason, you should listen to the Hammer and Nigel show.
Amen.
Every Monday through Friday, 9 to 11, 93 WIBC.
There's the first plug right there.
Amen. Shameless
Right there.
plug. Shameless plug.
Well, I mean, we might as well start there. So this Nigel guy we keep talking about. So how did this Hammer and Nigel idea came about, and where's this journey taking you over the last 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, man. We were a couple of radio nerds. Nigel, probably best known for his days over at X103.
Correct.
Then he worked over at Radio Now, playing Britney Spears records for a little while, which he hated. But most people associate Nigel with X103 during their heyday. It was Nigel, it was Adam Ritz, it was Don Stuck, it was, the Big Dumb Show and all Wink and O'Brien, all that stuff going on. At their pinnacle, Nigel was their night guy, and he was phenomenal at what he did. One Personality of the Year in Indianapolis. Then, because it's radio, he was fired for being too good at his job, making too much money.
That's what
They
happens.
replaced him with some scrub, and it never worked out. So Nigel and I were both at kind of a crossroads. I was at WZPL for like 10 years, did everything in that building, from producing to hosting afternoons, nights, did the sports show on our sister station, 1430. We had each taken new jobs. He was doing, I don't know, playing grab ass or something.
Right.
And I was working at the casino
He's
in
at the
Shelbyville. Right.
Where you met me.
Where I met Matt and ultimately Michael.
Right.
But we kind of still had that, creative spirit, creative juice where we wanted to do something. And we thought, man, if you listen to the current state of radio, it's a lot of garbage. Bob and Tom are still there because at the time it was both Bob and Tom still.
Right.
Bob has since retired.
Smiley, just Tom.
Yeah, now it's just Tom and Chick, and Smiley's doing his thing. But other than that, it's a lot of vanilla, boring radio where consultants have taken control and they tell you, just play the hits. We don't want to hear your personality, just play the hits. And that's not the kind of stuff that we grew up listening to. So we started this podcast, the Hammer and Nigel Show, 2 radio vagabonds coming together, produced by another radio vagabond, Brad B.S. Shoemaker, former web director at the Bob and Tom Show. So we got together, and if anything, it was just a chance for us to drink beer and talk and get some creative stuff out. Well, it kind of picked up some steam, picked up a lot of momentum. We used our Rolodexes to get some pretty solid guests. We started getting sponsors in after that. I mean, we had, limousine sponsors and local businesses. Eventually, we were getting paid to go to a bar at Coach's Tavern to do this show every Thursday. And, here we are, just not even really on a real radio station, but we've got like the governor of the state of Indiana getting pulled up in a limo to come out and do the Hammer Nigel podcast on a Thursday at 9.
That's got to be pretty awesome. So the radio station that you worked for formerly pretty much created a monster.
Yeah, well, we've all kind of worked at different places. We got our feet wet at the country station called The Bear. Now, you guys are probably too young to remember The Bear, but it was 93.9 before it became whatever it is now. I think it's like old school hip hop now or something.
When I think of The Bear, I think of the type of men that Mike's into. So
right.
Yep.
Big burly ones. Big burly.
Well, the thing is like if you worked at The Bear, you had to have this really weird bear name. So when Nigel worked there, they made him call himself the Ranger. And he's told the story on air before of how his dad would even make fun of him and call him the Rump Ranger.
Oh my God.
Luckily, once Nigel left there, I took his spot over there, and that station was on the decline, so they didn't even bother making me get a lame bear nickname.
Ranger Jr.
Right. So, but yeah, we started over there, and then we each kind of went our own ways. He had success X103. I worked up the ladder over at WZPL, did everything pretty much in the building. Radio happens. Sometimes you're hired to be fired. We each got blown out, went separate ways, still wanted to do stuff. So when I had this idea of putting this podcast together, I thought, you know what? Nigel's kind of a crazy bastard. I think I'm going to reach out to him and see if he'd be
He's not doing anything right now.
Right. He's available. He likes beer, and we'll put this thing together. And we found a web guy, and I think what we did there for about that 6-year stretch of the Hammer and Nigel podcast was a pretty cool thing, because we had the movers and shakers of Indianapolis on. If you were a media member in the city, you probably did our show at some point. We had athletes, Pro Bowl athletes, NBA All-Stars on our podcast, and we streamed video. We had multiple camera angles, and I can't stress this enough, we drank heavily for free.
Right.
And that's very important when you're plan for any business together.
Absolutely.
I was telling Matt, because I frequented the show when him and I would get together. We'd come out and watch the Hammer and Nigel podcast. And you guys had a lot of personality on there. A lot. But me being, I'm not quite the sports fan. I think my favorite guest of yours was Steve-O. And I felt like a kid in a candy store when he was on, and it was funny because Matt went to the bathroom. I love telling the story. Matt went to the bathroom while Steve-O was there, and he didn't even know Steve-O was in the bathroom.
I was taking a shit, and they didn't have at one point they did not have a door on the shitter. So
right, and he's screaming obscenities the whole time, like he's having the most terrible time trying to get this thing out.
And I was,
and Steve-O was standing right beside him.
I had no idea. Like, here I am taking a shit, and Steve-O's sitting there, washing his hands.
Yeah.
What's up, brother?
Steve-O was a good guest, man. He was fun, and he's the kind of guy that, understands you got to take pictures with people, because that's, what you do to sell your comedy shows. We had Pauly Shore come by, and it was the complete opposite.
Yeah, I heard he was a dick.
The most awkward, bizarre. I couldn't tell if he was on drugs, tired, sleepy, or just not funny.
And I was his bodyguard that day, remember?
Yeah. And he came up on stage and he demanded security. And it's a podcast in a bar, so I was like, Matt, we dub you security for Pauly Shore. And people were yelling, "Hey, we love you, Pauly, son-in-law," all this other crap, like you would expect when you see Pauly Shore, and it weirded him out. So yeah,
he's not used to that, really.
You would think Pauly Shore would welcome anybody yelling his name at any point. Right. Now, 1988, sure, I get it. Spring break Pauly. Yeah, but now, 2000, at the time, 15, just be happy somebody knows who your name is.
Right, yeah, things change, but people still watch those movies, I believe.
I'll watch Son-in-Law anytime it's on.
Son-in-Law's awesome. The best part of that night is I got a selfie with them, and we both looked just absolutely shit-faced. Like, he's got big dark circles around his eyes, like a raccoon.
He looks rough, man. He looked real bad. Like, I saw that picture the next day on social media, and if someone said, "Oh, Steve-O died last night," you could look at that picture and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, Pauly Shore died last night."
Yeah.
You could look at that picture and go, "Well, I can
Here's
see."
the start.
Right, I can
He
see
looks
where
It
like
all
he's gonna
started
die.
with the Hammer Nigel show. I was gonna say I want to tell a funny story about when we first met. I'd been working at the casino. I started out working in the Players Club. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, in the Players Club. I made cards for all of our patrons at the casino.
Now, explain what the Players Club is, because to me, the Players Club is something that Outkast and Rappin' Forte sing about.
No, I didn't get dressed in a nice suit. I wasn't smoking cigars. I wasn't humping the honeys.
You're giving everybody their cards to slam into the slot machines.
I was the lowest of the low on the totem pole, and it's just a starting job. Basically, I was through college, trying to pay my way through college, and funny story is, on Facebook I was listed in a domestic partnership with my buddy Clay Tucker. Hammer thought I was gay. Actually, asked C.J. Miller if I was gay. He thought I was gay.
And then he met you and found out it was true.
They found out it was true. He's
Right.
like, "Wow, this guy's really gay." So I went up to the stage one day. I was like, "I can't believe you thought I was gay, man." I'm like, "We've sit here and talked about women together."
Thought it was a cover up.
Right,
I wasn't
yeah.
mad at you.
Right.
I was about
Hey,
to say.
whatever you're into, that's fine.
I just always thought that was funny. I was like, "No, I'm just retarded, and I like to put my buddies as my partner on Facebook." And I mean, I like to call him, Mike, my hetero life mate.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time together.
We do everything
people
that married
think that I'm
couples do,
gay.
but have sex.
Isn't that called a bromance?
Yeah.
When two dudes that are friends hang out together and do
Don't-
everything but
right.
touch each other and mix saliva.
I mean, we touch each other.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
well.
hold hands when we go shopping and shit like that. But
No, we don't hold pants hands. So
I mean, we could, if that's what you're into, bub.
I'm not really.
That's
into
coming
that.
up at the second half of Highly Inappropriate later today with
Pants.
So you did the podcast for about 5 or 6 years. How did that transition over into your new position now?
now it's people forget that before the podcast, which was so successful, we were successful radio people before then. So it wasn't like it was learning some new craft. We just kind of got back on, the tricycle and started pedaling away again. We took the podcast, and at the time, X103 came back to us, back to Nigel, to me for the first time, and the original plan was for us to do the morning show over there. Well, then they had a change in leadership, and one thing happened, and we ended up just getting a crappy weekend show, which was cool because, again, we were back on the air again, and we would take some highlights of the podcast and put that on the X103 show. So we did that for a while, and then X103 decided to become Alt 103 and change direction.
Boo.
And
If you're listening, boo.
so we kind of got out the game a little bit. I then took a marketing job over at MS Communications. I became the promotions and marketing director for WIBC. So I already had my foot in the door there, and pulled some strings, got the Hammer Nigel Show back on the weekend schedule. Nigel came in, and ultimately he started taking over the MS-owned morning show in Terre Haute. It was a station called The River, a rock station in Terre Haute, which was owned by our company.
Which originally had Bob and Tom on the air, correct?
Right.
Right.
The syndicated version of Bob and Tom.
And,
so they decided to go with a quote-unquote live personality. Even though Nigel wasn't in Terre Haute, he was in a building downtown, he was still live doing the show in Terre Haute.
And he got quite a bit of flack for that, didn't he? Because he replaced Bob and Tom.
A little bit, but it wasn't as bad as we thought. And then his numbers were actually beating Bob and Tom
Yeah.
substantially. But a year later, it's the best numbers that the station had ever had. And they would also air some Hammer and Nigel stuff on the weekend. If it was like race weekend or start of Colts weekend or something, if we had a special show, we would put some best of clips together and they would air a special Hammer and Nigel deal, which they thought was pretty cool. Long story short, though, that station eventually got sold by MS Communications, and the Hammer and Nigel show stayed on WIBC, and we also fill in every once in a while on the sports channel, 1070 The Fan. And that kind of led to the bosses getting together saying, we like this show. This is something I think we need every night. And then boom goes the dynamite every Monday through Friday, 9 to 11. We do the show now on WIBC. And then every Sunday from 1 to 3, it's kind of a best of show. And I hate saying best of because that's such a D-bag thing to say. It's the best of my show. It's the stuff that we didn't suck at as bad through the majority of the week.
So you say, I mean, you just play 8 hours of what you previously played. Like it's all awesome, right?
Right. Anything that we didn't butcher horrendously, we'll tell our producer Ari to, hey, put that in the best of for this weekend.
Right.
We didn't actually slip up and drop an F-bomb, so there's a best of material.
Have you dropped an F-bomb on air yet?
No.
I was about to ask. Like, I know that you've transitioned from radio to podcast, back to radio. And I had asked you prior, I believe, if the transition was difficult, and you told me that it wasn't. Do you find it difficult not to slip up and say stuff that you're not supposed to say, even though you really, I mean, you do a really good job. I listen to the show quite a bit, but there are moments in that show where I'm like, maybe he was holding his tongue there.
Oh, there are definite moments where I hold my tongue, especially when you get rolling on a passionate topic. When we were talking about the debacle that's the Indiana beer laws this past week, we filled in on the afternoon show in WIBC, and I vote pretty much to the right. I'm not all in because I don't think anybody should be all in to one side of the political scale, not 100%, but I'm probably about 90% to the right, and I openly admit that. But the people that are in charge of the Indiana State House right now, the Speaker of the House, Brian Bosma, and then his partner in crime, David Long, these two guys are clowns.
Right.
And they're both Republicans, and all they do is take money from lobbyists and screw over the people that put them in the office. So I took a little time to just go after these guys because I'd had enough of it, and it was hard for me to bite my tongue without saying, somebody is an a-hole or dropping an S-bomb or something like that. But the podcast had nothing to do with that. That's just being passionate, being fired up, and not, calling somebody a name on air and getting fined. The fear of getting a $75,000 fine can put enough common sense into pretty much anybody's head.
Well, it cracks me up. You're talking about those guys in the State House who claim to be conservatives, and conservatives, the narrative with conservatives is they're for freedom, and people on the right are for freedom and being free. But you won't even let us drink alcohol on Sunday, a day off work. I can't go. I can go right now to a brewery on a Sunday and get a growler full of beer, drive home. I can drink it there, drive home, and get in a car wreck. But I can't go to a liquor store, buy beer, bring it back to my house, and drink in my backyard and not harm anything, but just yell obscenities at the neighbors.
I've never, ever in my entire life of being able to drink, which has been since 12 years old, understood the law of, okay, well, if you serve food, then you can serve alcohol. So I can go get trashed as long as I can eat, but I can't buy alcohol on Sunday.
Right. The thing that really drove me over the edge this last couple of weeks is every year when the State House gets together and they do their General Assembly and all the lawmakers get together and sing Kumbaya and ultimately screw us with some sort of bad laws.
Right.
Every year they put Sunday sales on the docket, and every year it goes away. Most of the time, we as citizens of Indiana let that slide because, okay, there are bigger fish to fry. We got to fix this RIF law. We got to fix the road funding bill. But this year, the reason everybody got pissed off was they started screwing over legitimate businesses doing things the right way.
Right.
Rickers didn't do anything wrong.
No.
They followed the law to a T. They went out of their way
that
to
guy
follow
should be
the
looked at
law.
as a genius because that's what he is.
Exactly.
Right.
Jay Ricker absolutely did everything right, and the governor even said so. But because they did so, Brian Bosma and David Long of the Indiana State House, because they're funded solely by lobbyists, and you can look this up if you think I'm trying to give you hyperbole, because they actually have to post this information.
Stop voting for these assholes, by the way.
Right.
Exactly. Look at how much money they're taking from lobbyists. They got their panties in a wad because that affects their bottom line. They're getting brushed back from the lobbyists saying, no, wait a minute, the liquor store owners don't want this. This is a loophole. And then magically, a fix came right away. How often have things been fixed right away at the State House? Never.
Ever.
The casinos in Shelbyville and Anderson try to get live dealers, and that took like 3 or 4 years just to get a bill doctored, and they still couldn't get it through the Senate.
So this, of all things, that basically tells you what their priority is. So
Exactly.
You know where they're getting their money.
And the big backlash this time was that everybody drew a line in the sand and said, all right, this is enough. Even Republicans, especially Republicans, said, you've got to stop this crap because now you're screwing over businesses. Say what you want about the conservative voters. They might be heartless or whatever. We've heard all that before. But we support business. We support being capitalists, and we think anybody should be able to make the kind of money you can make without ramifications.
Right.
That's part of what the American dream is. No one should be able to tell you how to run your business if you're doing things by the law of Indiana.
Or our life in general, right?
Exactly. So, they started screwing over the Rickers Company, and everybody started saying, all right, now you guys are getting too far. And here's what's going to happen. And I'm curious to see, because it's a big 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks at the Indiana State House, you're going to find a lot of information. And this is my prediction. I hope I'm wrong, but this is my prediction. They're going to keep adding little bitty ducats to this alcohol bill. They're going to have a private vote on it where the public's not involved, and they're going to try to push it to the back burner and hope everybody forgets about it. Mark my words. But as long as I've got a microphone at WIBC, I will not let that happen.
Right. And that just goes to show you, and I hate saying this, but it's true more than it is false, is that your governing bodies are not for the people.
No,
they're for their self-interest. They're for their pockets.
Well, everybody, by nature, everybody's for their own individual interest, and that's the whole point of having a very small, limited government.
Right.
Because anybody that's going to get in power is going to eventually abuse that power so they can pursue their own individual interests. So the whole point is to keep the government as small as possible, as close to the people as possible. But we live in a country now where the federal government controls everything. Instead, I would be all right if Shelby County made all the laws, or better yet, if Morristown made all the laws.
I would be okay with the states making laws.
No, absolutely.
The less government, the better. Anytime you can get the government out of your business, the better. But unfortunately, the way things are now, people are going to vote party lines. You look at what's going on the Democratic side of the table. The Democrats want everything for free. They think everybody should have free college, free meals, free cars, everything's free. But then when you ask how somebody's going to pay for that, nobody has an answer.
The rich are going to pay for it.
Exactly. The rich are going to pay for it.
Right.
So the people that have actually been out busting their butts and not collecting welfare are going to have to pay for those who are.
Which takes away their incentive, because you got young, hungry people like myself who want to be rich someday, and if you change the laws and that comes to effect where all these people are getting entitlements, me as a rich person, I'm gonna say, why would I want to make $1 million when I got to pay 50% back to the state?
I might as well make
40. I might as well make
50.
I might as well make half that, and I pay a fraction of the taxes, because what's the incentive for being rich when I have to give it all to the state, or I have to give it all to the government?
There is none.
No, there's none at all.
And you keep taking that down lower and lower on the food chain, so to speak. You've got somebody that's like, well, why should I go get a job when I could just sit home and collect unemployment, sit here and collect welfare, and I don't have to, go buy gas. I don't have to be responsible. Oh, Bernie Sanders is going to take care of me.
See, that's the old bastard.
I'm so glad he did not. I knew he wasn't going to get it, but holy crap.
I wish death on nobody, but if somebody off that dude, I would not be upset at all.
I mean, time should probably take care of that in itself.
You want this crotchety old bastard. What cracks me up, I'm not necessarily a Donald Trump fan. I like some of the stuff he's doing, but overall, I'm not a big Donald Trump fan, and people are talking about this guy's age. But half the people that are bitching about Donald Trump being, what is he, 67?
Yeah, something.
You're voting for a guy who's 75, who's been in Congress for 30 years and has done nothing. He's never written a bill that has passed.
Right.
Never. In 30 freaking years of Congress. And you're going to tell me this guy's the answer to all of our problems.
That's because they hear free, and that's all they hear.
No, they're fucking stupid.
And you keep saying the word they, and I'm assuming these are the people you see complaining on social media. These are the people you see on television.
I've went on a delete spree on Facebook, and I hate people that I care about. I've deleted them because all I heard after the election, I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but all they did after the election is bitch and bitch and bitch that Donald's the president and we're so screwed now. It's like, we put up for 8 years of Obama, and yeah, we bitched a little bit, but we didn't act like our life was over. I deleted somebody because they went to a conference about how to survive the next 4 years. You think the president controls your life that much that you went to a conference on surviving the next 4 years? Like, how entitled is our culture now? It's embarrassing.
If you need a safe space to go to school because you can't handle an election, then you are the correct term is snowflake. That's the pop culture term now. Snowflake. That's true.
Yeah. Cheers, Tommy Lauren.
I do like Tommy Lauren.
You like her because she's hot.
Well, there's that. But
come on.
This is my statement, and I actually caught a lot of crap from this from conservative people. But again, I'm somebody that voted for Donald Trump. I believe in, more often than not, the Republican point of view compared to the liberal point of view. But I have voted for a Democrat in the past. I'm not all in. right now there are certain people in the Republican Party that want you to be all in 100%. You have to be pro choice, or you have to be pro, anti-abortion. You have to be this, that. I don't think you have to be everything.
It's never going to work out that way.
And look, I'm not here to start a debate on, abortion, because let's be honest, 3 dudes talking about abortion, no one gives a damn. I will let the women decide that for themselves. But so here's the problem I had with what Glenn Beck did to Tomi Lahren. Glenn Beck owns the Blaze Network, hired Tomi Lahren to be one of his stars, and she was. Right. She was the breakout star of that network. She had more web hits than anybody. She was making good money. She got all the attention. But when she went on The View and said that she was pro-choice, which hardcore conservatives are not pro-choice. They are very anti-abortion. They suspended her indefinitely.
Right.
Now, again, it's not to me about her stance on whether she thinks abortion is right or wrong. What I had a problem with was the way Glenn Beck suspended her because she shared her point of view. Now, he's got the right to do that. I'm not saying it's not illegal, but that's what the Democrats do.
It's kind of
hypocritical. The Democrats are the ones that, if a conservative speaker speaks at their college campus, if Milo went to go speak somewhere, they would have riots and pickets. We can't let this man speak. Right. Well, Glenn Beck did the exact same thing to Tomi Lahren, and that was my stance all along. I'm not here to debate abortion with anybody, but I think if she's got reasons to back up why she said it, you can't censor her. That's what Democrats do. That's not what Republicans and conservatives do, and Glenn Beck did that.
I think it's fair to say too, abortion is a we're never going to get it right because it's a morality issue, and everybody's got different morals because we all have different backgrounds. We believe in different things. Some people are Christian, some people aren't Christian. They're Jewish, whatever. We all have different morals. So it's a morality thing. You're never going to get that right. For myself, I'm kind of bent on the issue myself because I believe in life. I believe in individual liberties and how somebody going to be, how somebody can have rights if they've never had a chance to live. But at the same time, I don't know what women go through, and
right, and there's other circumstances too, like if she's raped, what if she's attacked? There's so many ifs, ands, or buts. There's not a clear yes or no.
No,
I mean you leave that to the Supreme Court, but they've already handled that, and Donald Trump's even came out and said that issue's been decided.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. So, would you like Tomi if she was a 70-year-old fat guy?
Probably. Because she puts herself out there.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. The highest rated show in the history of cable news, we just found this out 2 weeks ago, in the history of cable news this past quarter was Bill O'Reilly. And no teenage girls has pictures of Bill O'Reilly hanging up in her room.
Absolutely not.
People like people who are passionate, who study up on the issues and put themselves out there. Now, one could argue Tomi doesn't study up to the point to where she should. Tomi's also 24 years old.
Right. God bless her heart.
So, yeah, her look helps. That's a big part of her appeal. There's no doubt to it. You can't be naive and say people don't like hot, young, blonde smoke shows that are smart.
I certainly do.
But to say that it's the only reason she's popular, I don't think that's the case at all. She's an example of where conservatives are at as a younger crowd right now. There's 2 different factions. There's the old school type, as we've said, that have to be all in. And then there's the younger folks. There's myself. There's Tomi, there's, other folks that are saying, what, I believe in conservative values, but there are some things, like with everything, that I'm not 100% all in on. And I think that's okay.
No, it's 100. You should never you should never be 100% all in because I think that's a puppet.
It limits you.
It's 100%. You're a puppet.
So
this past week, a great example of the people that went all in. We were talking about the Facebook people earlier. When Donald Trump decided to give the okay for the, missiles to go into Syria and light up the chemical weapons and take care of all that stuff, all the people that were the, quote, not my president anti-Trumpers were crapping their pants saying how it should have been Hillary Clinton, but they did not realize that literally 2 hours before that attack, Hillary Clinton was speaking at a convention for women and said that the proper thing to do was to send missiles into Syria. And we played that audio back in our show, and we shared it on social media, and after that, we didn't hear as many of these people saying that, oh, not my president. The problem when you have such a high-profile election like we had this past year is 2 things happen. There's a big rush to get everybody registered to vote. Not everybody should vote. If you don't know what you're
Amen to
talking
that.
about,
Amen to
not
that.
everybody needs to vote. These people that were undecided, literally 2 or 3 days before the election, what in the hell were you waiting for? Was there not enough information out there for you to base your opinion 3 days before the election? If you're that wishy-washy, maybe voting isn't for you.
Maybe I'd say one of my favorite quotes of all time is, the biggest argument against democracy is a conversation with the average voter.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So you've got these people that go out and rush to vote because they want to be part of the process, which is fine.
Right.
And I'm good with that. But then you've got so many young people that think they know everything because they voted once.
Right.
Like, I wonder how many people that you see complaining on Facebook, ripping off all these useless and usually incorrect pieces of information,
Right.
have voted in anything other than a presidential election. Any local elections, any primaries.
Have done anything.
Right.
And I love these kids. They go to college and they have these liberal professors. And I'm not downgrading anybody's profession or what they're doing, but you think about it, these liberal professors. They're teachers at the end of the day. Most of them, I'd say a good handful of them, have never actually had a job outside of teaching. So they want to tell you how the real world works, but they don't actually, I wouldn't say they're not in the real world, but they're just teachers, and most of them are liberal. I'd say it's probably 70% of professors are liberal, and that's a problem right now, is the education these kids are getting. And I think it starts with public education, with, K through 12 right now, because we're all taught from a young age to be a puppet.
Yeah, and I think we're getting to a point now, and Tony Katz makes a good point of this often on his show on WIBC, that we're getting at a point to society where you don't need that degree that says Harvard on it anymore.
Absolutely not.
You can get an online degree, and it's all about the experience, the networking, the life skills. Go do an apprentice, go do an internship, go learn the skills of whatever it is you want to do. And as long as you've got something on it that says, yeah, I studied long enough to get this piece of paper from whatever it is.
Paper says, I am not an idiot.
Right.
No.
The I am not an idiot doctrine. That's all you need for the majority of jobs in the workforce. Now, sure, if you want to be a Supreme Court justice, you probably need to have a legitimate college degree. But if you want to work in an office, if you want to work somewhere in management, if you want to get a job anywhere, there's really not a whole lot of difference between getting a degree from Vincennes, getting a degree from Indiana Governor's University, getting a degree from Indiana University, IUPUI. Certain institutions will always carry heavy weight. You show up at a job interview with Harvard, with Notre Dame, with Stanford, yes, you're probably going to get a job. But at the same time, you're not going to pay that education off probably until you're 50 or 60 years old.
I used to make the joke all the time when we worked at the casino together. There was a group of 5 of us, and I was the only one with a marketing degree. There was 5 of us. Everybody else had a communications degree, but I was the only one with a marketing degree. And I was like, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your degree is. It's like what your skills in. What can you do? What can you bring to the table? And that's all that matters. And it's really, at the end of the day, it's who you know. And
I think it's silly that it's 2017. You can get any information, like you said, on the internet.
Turn on your computer.
Right, and look the shit
Print
up
off the Harvard degree,
Right, but some places, and I understand some places wanting a piece of hard copy paper that says I went to such and such to get this degree,
Sure,
or to acquire this.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you're just paying for a paper with a name on it.
Yep.
You can still learn pretty much everything that you need to know to survive in any job that you want to have.
Well, look at 2 big dipshits right here on both sides of you, Hammer. Learn to build a podcast studio by watching YouTube videos.
Right. This is a nice setup, by the way. I was expected to come in here and have chloroform put over my mouth and then I wake up without pants on.
That's how we got
But
you
no,
here.
this is actually a legitimate program. I'm impressed.
When you knew nothing about it's funny because I learned everything as I went, as did he, and nobody else can see this, but the walls on the opposite side are a different color. It didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, so those are getting repainted. But minus that, I think everything's went really well.
Next thing you guys need to have is turn this into a big green screen back here, where you make it look like I'm being chased by a bear or something the whole time.
Just have a giant penis behind you the whole time you're talking.
We're gonna Ranger Nigel on here.
Bring the Ranger on. Have a picture of the Ranger behind me.
Yeah.
But no, this is awesome, and thank you guys for having me. And
thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's switch the topics a little bit here. I know, Brett, this isn't your strong suit, but
here we go.
Hammer, you're a huge sports fan, and I might as well start with your bread and butter, the Cubs. What do you think about the Cubs this year?
As you can tell right now, I'm wearing a dingy, beat-up, holy Harry Carey's Bar t-shirt in honor of the win last night in Chicago. At the time of our recording here, the Cubs had their home opener last night. They raised up a championship banner, something I didn't think I would ever see in my lifetime. And so I thought in order to keep it real, I would wear my old beat-up Harry Carey's Bar t-shirt in here today.
How long have you had that shirt?
I have had this since 2002.
It looks like you haven't washed it since 2002 either.
I actually just put this on this morning. This is just stuff I've spilled on here since this morning.
How long do you think that shirt's going to last?
My wife keeps trying to throw it away, and I just keep looking at her in the eye and go, "You do this,
Oh, it's over.
it's yeah, this is grounds for divorce."
You pull it out of the trash, don't you?
Oh, she tries every time we do the spring cleaning. Can you please get rid of this? No. If I get rid of this, I'm going with it.
It's going to turn into a tummy shirt eventually. You know?
Well, I mean, at this rate, it's kind of like almost ripping down to my shoulder
make
like
it
a
a cutoff.
flash dance kind of look.
Spaghetti strap.
Well, it's so funny because I think the last time that we hung out was before the Cubs actually won the World Series, and you told me, you said if the Cubs win, I'm going to go have a beer with my grandpa.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, my grandpa was the one that got me into watching the Cubs as a kid because when I was real little, both of my parents worked and I would go to my grandparents' house and they would kind of watch me throughout the day. And this was during the era where every single Chicago Cubs game was on WGN.
Yep.
So basically, summer times, I'd go to my grandpa's house and it was on. So Cubs baseball was my babysitter, basically. I grew up with Harry Carey and Steve Stone and some of the worst baseball you've ever seen. I mean, just horrible Cubs teams. Awful. And, it got into my blood. And I just became a Cubs fan. And my grandpa and I would sit down and watch the games and we'd joke about how bad they are. And, and once he passed, I always told myself, heaven forbid the Cubs ever win the whole thing. First thing I'm going to do is go to his gravesite and crack open a Budweiser and celebrate. We were Cubs fans and we were Bud men. That's the way it was.
And you had to have probably a few grown man tears that day, I imagine. It's sports are so. I was 16 when the Colts first won the Super Bowl, and it was such a big thing for me. And I didn't have that much nostalgia as you did, but it's just so. I'm not a Cubs fan. I really don't like baseball, to be honest with you. But just I was happy the Cubs won. Just because
so many
people have been waiting their whole lives.
So many people.
Right.
Waiting their whole lives to see the Cubs win the World Series.
I feel guilty now because I watched the ceremony where they raised the banner of the rafters. I went to the event downtown where they had the World Series championship trophy, and I'm thinking, man, I'm standing next to this trophy. There are people that live to be 100+ years old that never got to see this.
Never got to see it.
Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub, never played in a playoff game in his entire career in Chicago. And here I am. I'm some fat kid from Indianapolis, and I'm standing next to the World Series trophy. It doesn't seem fair, but... Yeah, that beer with my grandpa that day at the graveyard, man, I did cry some grown-ass man tears, and it was something I will never forget. And it's cool seeing my kids, because my oldest is a Cub fan like me, but my young one, somehow Grandpa got to him, because my dad's a Reds fan.
Yeah.
Grandpa got to my young one, and now he's the antagonist.
Yeah.
He's anti-Cub. He'll wear the Reds gear to anything we go to. And
now you can make fun because the Rebs are going to be dog shit this year, aren't they?
Yeah, but they've got that whole, I've won multiple championships, in your lifetime argument.
Right.
So I get that, They still have players alive that were part of the Big Red Machine. So I'm not going to run smack, but I think the Cubs are set for a long time and the Reds are not.
You think the Cubs repeat this year?
Barring injury, they've got as good a shot as anybody. They've got the best roster, in Major League Baseball, and I don't think it's close. But one injury can take everything and flush it right down the toilet.
Were you? Did you shit some bricks when Schwarber got injured last year?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I hated to see it because I was more curious than I was anything else, because he was coming off an end of the year where he was raking with the bat, and I thought, is there any way this guy can continually do this game in and game out? I was curious. And then he went down. I thought, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
We're not going to find out. Well, it turns out he came back at the World Series, and yes, he absolutely can do that every single game, and he's ridiculous with the bat. But, yeah, I mean, if Chris Bryant goes down, Jake Arrieta, John Lester goes down, it's like that with any team. Your star goes down, season goes down the toilet. And there are good teams in baseball. I don't want to bore anybody with hardcore baseball talk here, but in the National League specifically, there are really two teams in each division that have a legitimate shot to win. It's the Cubs and Cardinals in the Central. It's the Nationals and the Mets in the East. And it's probably the Dodgers and the Giants in the West.
Hell yeah, man! Hell yeah! Well, I'm rooting for you, man. I like to see the Cubs win because I think baseball, sports in general, is just better when the Cubs win, in my opinion.
Right, and that's the Notre Dame football argument too. Like, I'm not a huge Notre Dame guy. I know your brother is, but college football is better when Notre Dame does well.
100%.
The NFL is better when the Cowboys are relevant. I mean, love them or hate them,
Unfortunately,
but that's the case. Either everybody is rooting for them or rooting against them. Very few people have no opinion on Notre Dame football, on the Dallas Cowboys, on Kentucky basketball.
it's like I've been in a better mood lately because finally the Pacers are winning some games.
Yes, yes. And man, the Lance effect is real and it's spectacular.
Why did we ever get rid of him?
Bigger question, why did the Pacers decide year in and year out to go with this run and gun Golden State of the East style?
Yeah, why are we trying to?
I understand that's where the league is going. Everybody wants to run and gun and put up 150 points, and that's fine. But if you're making conference finals and taking the best team in the league to 7 games year after year, what's wrong with that?
No, I mean,
What's wrong with maybe finding a couple more pieces to play some smash mouth? And look what happened in the NBA Finals last year. Golden State coming off 73 wins, run and gun, Splash Brothers, all this stuff. What did Cleveland do to them in the final 4 games? They physically beat them down. They out-muscled them. LeBron was backing people down. Kevin Love was actually getting some rebounds. They showed some muscle, and lo and behold, they won some championships.
I mean, look at the Pacers. Could have been a 2-time champs had it not been for LeBron James. I mean, it's people don't understand that the Pacers had a great team, and we played defense, we played half-court offense, we played defense, we could stop guys. We weren't scoring a ton of points, but nobody was outscoring us, and that was a thing.
Right. The Pacers historically have always ran into the best player in the league to stop them.
Yeah.
Going back to those teams in the 90s, yes, you had a shot to get past the Knicks, but you run into
Michael
those Lakers
Jordan.
teams that had, Kobe and Shaq together in their prime.
Yeah.
Not like, the latter years. These guys were in their prime. And then you had those teams that were playing against the Bulls, and you ran into that guy named Michael Jordan, who last time I checked was pretty good. And recently you ran into LeBron James. So it's not like you're getting beat, by some scrubs. You're getting beat by arguably
The greatest player of our generation.
yeah, Michael Jordan, LeBron James. If you want to use the lame ESPN analogy, could be on the Mount Rushmore of NBA players, and a
Mike and Mike.
stacked, ridiculously stacked Lakers team.
Dude, that Cleveland team is just ridiculous. You have the highest salary or the highest salary cap in the league right now, and you just have the who's who on that team. It's like, how are you going to get past that team? I don't understand. I don't even think it's fair in a way, and that kind of brings up the whole entitled generation. That's a problem. One of the biggest problems I have with my generation is like we don't like competition. We would rather team up with the best guys and just obliterate everybody.
Or just say eliminate competition and not keep score.
Right.
Everybody gets a trophy.
Everybody gets a trophy.
Oh,
yeah.
It's so. What do you think about Paul George lately?
I think Lance has brought out some good in Paul George. I think a little bit of that is motivation, though.
Yeah,
I think Paul George saw the standing ovation that Lance Stevenson got when he came in and thought, now, wait a minute.
I deserve that.
Yeah, I deserve that. Yet here we are struggling to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. I got to be honest, I think we're seeing the last few games of Paul George in the Indiana Pacer uniform. Not that I want him to go, but the economics of the NBA dictate you're going to have to move Paul George because he's made it perfectly clear if the Pacers aren't competing for a championship, he's going to leave in free agency.
Well, here's the big thing too: is if he makes All NBA, which he probably should. I mean, Durant's been out most of the year or a lot of the year. LeBron's probably the only person that has better stats than Paul right now. So
and Russell Westbrook's put up some numbers,
but he's not a forward though.
True.
So you're looking at that right now, and if he makes All NBA, the Pacers can pay him more than anybody else can. So it really comes out of that. I think if he makes All NBA, he stays here.
I don't think he does. I don't think at that point the money even matters to Paul. I think he's ready to expand his brand, and I think he wants to go home and play in front of his crowd in Los Angeles. I mean, that's where he's from, and you can also do more endorsements and become a bigger star out in Los Angeles. You can sell more jerseys. You can appear in more commercials. You can do those things here in Indianapolis. I mean, he's got a shoe. He's on Gatorade commercials. He was on the cover of a video game. But I think he can go out to Los Angeles and take that next level. And if you're the Pacers, you can't risk losing him for nothing. I mean, if he walks away and you get nothing in return, you've set the franchise back 10 years.
10 years.
Say hello to the lottery for the next 10 years. So,
I mean, Larry's just got to have a heart-to-heart to it and be like, what's your plans? If it's a stay here, let's sign this contract. If it's not, we're trading your ass. We got to get something out of you.
If you want to be on a contender, listen to Boston. Boston needs an alpha male, and they've got all those ridiculous draft picks from New Jersey to play with. I'm sorry, from Brooklyn to play with. So if you can get, a number one pick in the draft and keep your first rounder for Paul George, then I think you almost have to do that.
Well, I think regardless of what happens, I think we're going to get set back 10 years just for the simple fact that, I mean, you lose Paul George. Say what you want about the guy. Maybe he doesn't play hard all the time, but he's an absolute beast. I mean, people don't understand. Because I was having an argument with a buddy of mine last week saying that Paul's not a superstar. I'm like, look at Paul's numbers over the last 2 months. Second only to Russell Westbrook. He's been killing it, just tearing the league up. I mean, when you're averaging, he's on the best stretch of his career, and people say, "Oh, it's a down year for Paul," but he's statistically having the best year ever. I mean, he's just, he's incredible. He can do it all. I mean, not many players. You're talking about a handful of guys that can literally do everything from pass, score, rebound, and play defense. I mean, I love that Harden is considered an MVP candidate, but he cannot guard you. He cannot stop you from going to the fucking hole.
I get that.
Yeah.
The only caveat to that is Paul sometimes has a tendency to turn it on late in the year and the playoffs, which is great. I mean, that's what you want.
Right.
But at that point, you're already a 7 seed.
Do it for 82 games, bro.
Exactly. If you were doing that the rest of the year, these games would be at home and you'd be a 2 or 3 seed. Because let's be honest, the East certainly isn't the West. There's maybe 2 legitimately good teams in the East, and everybody else. I'm not scared of Toronto, not scared of Atlanta. I mean, these are teams that the Pacers should be competing with instead of trying to backdoor their way into the playoffs.
As of right now, it looks like we're probably going to play Cleveland because they lost last night. I think that secures the number 2 for them. We need help to get the 6th seed.
We need help. Actually, I'm not completely sold they're going to make it in because Atlanta tomorrow, at the time of this taping, the show is Wednesday. I'm sorry, the game is Wednesday. Atlanta's playing to win. So I'd be shocked if they rested starters. The other 2 teams, the Bulls and the Heat, are each playing teams either resting starters or are just god-awful.
Yeah, we have to win.
So it's win or go home, I think.
If we win, I think we'll win tomorrow, just us being at home. Here's the funny about the Pacers. We have one of the best home records in the league and one of the worst road records. I mean, I'm not going to say that we pull off the upset, but regardless of who we play, I think we'll be competitive. I really do. I think with Paul playing the way he is, I think he'll turn up. He'll probably average 30 a game in the playoffs like he did last year. With Lance being there, I like our future. And that's what disappoints me about the possibility that Paul leaving is I really like our future with Miles Turner. We got Lance locked down for 3 years. I think Thad Young's a piece that we should keep around for a while.
If PG does leave, though, can you rebuild around Miles Turner? We all like Miles Turner, but is he the guy you can build a franchise around?
That's also scary because I think he's got the potential to be that guy, but you just don't know. It was the same thing when Paul. I mean, we forget we were Paul George's biggest critic for his first 2 years because it's like, what is this guy doing? He's a starting two guard in the league, and he was hardly averaging 10 points a game. Then just literally, he came to Indiana Grand Casino to sign some autographs, and literally after that, he became the Paul George that we know now. And I mean, everybody was criticizing him. And you just don't know with that raw potential. I think Miles Turner has the ability to be one of the best Pacers ever.
And he's only 21 years old. That's the thing people forget. He's only 21 years old.
And he's averaging more points. At what was it? 20 and under. He was averaging more points than only 4 centers in league history. I mean, so he's not a slouch. Somebody called Miles a slouch the other day. I was like, he's kind of trailed off at the end of the year, but...
Man, when I was 21 years old, I was passed out face down in a watery ditch trying to hitchhike to an after party at Ball State.
Right.
So I'm not going to be too overly critical on Miles, but I don't think Miles is a center, though. You need to draft a legitimate big, and move Miles to the 4 spot.
Exactly. He'd be a stretch 4 because Miles can hit the 3. He can guard outside. I completely agree. I think that we should go after a big-ass center in the offseason, whether we sign somebody or we draft somebody, because we're going to have a decent draft spot. Probably, I think we're set at like 14 or 15 right now.
Somewhere in the teens, yeah.
Depending on how we do in the playoffs. More than likely, I think we'll play Cleveland, which sucks. But
I'm all in on trying. If you're convinced Paul George is going to leave, if you're convinced of that, trade him to Boston. Boston gets what they want. They get their alpha male go-to star to play with Isaiah Thomas. We get their probably number one pick in the draft. If not number one, then number two. And this is a really good NBA draft.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, ridiculously good, deep NBA draft. So as long as you're not drafting Lonzo Ball, I'm fine with that because I don't want his dad in Indianapolis. But there's a lot of great playmakers. I mean, just watch, that Kentucky game against North Carolina in the NCAA tournament, and I'm thinking as a Pacer fan, like to see him, could use that guy.
I want DeMarcus Cousins.
I don't want him anywhere near Miles Turner. I don't want Miles Turner to turn out to be some, lazy malcontent the way that DeMarcus Cousins is. His numbers aren't worth it.
I want that style of play, I guess. That big beat. I mean, nobody can stop DeMarcus. When he's on, he's on.
DeMarcus can, and that's why. You can't. You put him on the same team as Lance Stevenson, sweet Jesus.
We got 2004 all over again.
It's 2004 all over again. No, thank you. Right. Sometimes talent isn't worth the pain in the butt.
All right, so let's talk about the Colts a little bit. It's fair to say after back-to-back 8 and 8 years, we as Colts fans are a little disappointed because we have got, I'm not old enough to remember the 90s teams or the Colts always being horrible. We've kind of been spoiled over the last 20 years or so with a consistent winner, and now we're mediocre, which I don't settle for mediocre. So what do you think about the Colts coming up here in 2017?
I think everybody around them is getting better. It's still the worst division in football.
Absolutely.
Every year we keep hearing about, Jacksonville's better, and they get off to like a whopping 1-7 start, but that one win comes against the Indianapolis Colts.
Yep.
Tennessee, I think, is going to be really good. Just because they've got the position in place where they don't rely solely on their quarterback. Because I'm not all in on Marcus Mariota. I don't think he can stay healthy.
No.
But their running game is amazing. And they've got a big, strong offensive line. They've got DeMarco Murray running the way that he was when he was with the Cowboys. And then they've got the big kid from Alabama that comes in and hammers you at the goal line. So they're getting better. The Texans, they lost out on the Tony Romo sweepstakes. They had everything in place. All they needed was a trigger man, and they still don't have it. The Houston Texans are a quarterback away from legitimately being one of the best teams in the AFC. They gave the New England Patriots everything they wanted and more in a playoff game in Foxborough last year. They just couldn't score.
I mean, there's been so many rumors surrounding the Texans, whether it's them signing Colin Kaepernick. My buddy's a Texans fan. He was excited about the idea. I'm like, you're a Texans fan if you're excited about signing Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, how's that going to go over in Texas, by the way? The most conservative FU state in the union. Yeah, let's bring the guy that doesn't stand up for the national anthem in. That's going to go over real well in the deep state of Texas. Good luck with that. There have been rumors of Jay Cutler. There have been other rumors, but man, they really missed the boat. They were banking on Tony Romo, I think, and they're still probably the team to beat. They're the 2-time division winning champions. They're getting J.J. Watt back on a team that played good defense last year anyway. So if they can just get anything, they're probably the team to beat. As far as the Colts, man,
keep Andrew Luck off his ass, and we're going to win that division, in my opinion.
It's going to be close just because I don't expect much from the defense. And I know they've had an overhaul, and I like the free agent signings they've had. But at this point, us three sitting at this table might have been an upgrade to the defensive roster last year.
That's true. I mean,
and last time I checked, 2 of the 3 people up here have man boobs, and Mike has a vagina.
I do.
So I'm not sold that this is a team that's ready to make a run.
I like the depth we brought in at linebacker. Sean Spence from the U. He was one of my favorite players at the U. He's a beast. He's coming off ACL surgery. It takes a year. He was in Pittsburgh last year. It normally takes a year or so to kind of recover from that ACL injury. But if he comes back and is the Sean Spence old, you got a guy who's possibly an all-pro talent. We brought in Barkevius Mingo as well as Jabal Shear from New England, guys that can get sacks. They're not the type of guys that are going to get you 10 to 12 sacks a year, but people that can get after the passer. I think we need a premier pass rusher, and we need a number 2 corner. Those are our biggest needs right now.
I keep seeing people talk about the draft coming up saying, you need to draft a running back. If Dalvin Cook's there, take him. No. Go defense or go home.
Frank Gore has not showed any signs of slowing down. So I understand you got to build for the future, but I think if you draft a running back, I mean, that's a big FU to the fans because our defense could not stop any. How many times did we have the lead last year? Like, oh, we just need one stop, and the team would just kick our ass down the field.
You have to get your pass rusher at the first round. You can find running backs if you want later. I mean, there's a chance Christian McCaffrey could be hanging around somewhere in round 2
anymore. It's not a running back lead anymore. We could get a starting running back in the 4th round because there's so many. How many premier running backs are left? I mean, everybody splits carries between running backs.
Right. There's not an Ezekiel Elliott available, where you're picking at.
No,
he was the last one that you could tell he's your bell cow back. Le'Veon Bell, he's your, no pun intended, bell cow back where you can give him the ball 35 times a game. He's going to play all 3 downs.
And I'm convinced Michael Britt could actually run behind that Dallas Cowboys line. I mean, you're talking about...
What are you trying to imply?
Oh, nothing. I think you're very masculine, buddy.
Thank you.
It's those athletic thighs. That's really what it is.
Snap your neck off with them.
Well, you just lower your shoulder and run through people.
Honestly, I think the Colts go 8-8 again. I think Chuck Pagano gets fired. But I think the pieces are starting to become in the right place where you're only about a year or 2 away. Because let's keep in mind, even though the division is getting better, it's still the AFC South.
I think if the Colts go 8-8 again, I'll spend the year depressed, and I should be on suicide watch by the end of the year. So that's...
Well, better get those antidepressants ready.
Yeah, that's upsetting.
Yeah.
The preseason schedule came out, and the Colts, good for them. They got the crappiest 2 games in the preseason. The opener, where you're going to see Andrew Luck play all of 3 plays, hand the ball off 3 times, and go put a baseball cap on.
Yeah.
And the final game, where he won't play at all.
No, right?
So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny, Mike Brett, because you don't like sports at all, so you don't understand
No, I don't even
the
know.
emotional
Right now-
attachment that we have to these teams.
Right now, I mean, I have no clue what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, so
it sounds like you're talking about a bunch of dudes and how you like them.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. People walk in my room and I've got all the sports memorabilia hanging up. So like, oh, cool, you got a bunch of dudes hanging up in your room. Like, yeah, you got a problem.
Why is this camera above your bed? Don't worry about it.
Absolutely not.
It's my camera.
Yeah, maybe I have a webcam show, maybe I don't. That's neither here nor there.
Well,
absolutely.
Everybody will find out that you do eventually.
So my early Colts prediction is I think if Andrew Luck stays healthy, and that's a big if because he hasn't over the last 2 years, he's missed some games. I think the Colts win the division. I think once you get in the playoffs, it's anybody's ball game. I think New England's going to be hard to beat. I mean, it sucks to say. I hate New England.
They're not even a rival anymore because the Colts have fallen so far out of the mix.
We're not even competitive, but I hate New England. I hate Tom Brady. I hate Bill Belichick with every fiber in my being. And we can't even compete with them anymore. It's so frustrating. It's like, what are we going to do? I think Chuck's hanging on by a thread. He was just a fill-in because there's nobody else to take his position.
Right. So we're going to keep chopping wood and keep our blinders on for another year.
Yeah, we're going to get some more grit. We're going to grit it up for one more year. Then, Chuck, you're going bye-bye. And it sucks because Chuck's a great guy. I would have a beer with Chuck Pagano, but I don't want him. I wouldn't want him coaching my Little League team. Absolutely not. So, all right, Hammer, I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been a pleasure, dude.
No problem, man. Thank you guys for having me. This is awesome.
In all honesty, you were one of my biggest influences for wanting to start this. We've been wanting to do this for about 4 years now.
A long time.
And, I mean, we bought all this equipment almost a year ago.
I looked the other day. It's been about a year. Then for whatever reason, I had to get other stuff and...
Rehab.
Right. Rehabilitation.
He had that one girlfriend that wouldn't let him come out of the house.
She spent all my money, so that's why I couldn't afford anything.
Addiction and masturbation.
No, but it's great that we finally got it started, and I told Matt that I definitely wanted to have you on. Hopefully it can be more than once.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to be a regular if you'll have me back, and we'll do this thing all the time.
Yeah, most certainly. Matt, will you have him?
Yeah, I'll have them. I'll definitely have them. It's our first official podcast.
It is. So.
Thank you for listening to Highly Inappropriate.
Tune into 93.1 WIBC.
Absolutely. You want to plug yourself real quick? Yeah. Where can people follow you at?
Follow the show on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter is at Hammer and Nigel, all one word. Facebook.com/Hammer and Nigel. You can go to WIBC.com, look for the on-air section, scroll down, you'll find us, you'll find our blogs. And every Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 p.m., live. We're the only show that's a local talk show that's live in the evening here in Indianapolis.
It's good stuff.
Right. That's Jason Hammer, one half of the Hammer Nigel Show on WIBC. Thank you guys for tuning in to Highly Inappropriate with Matt and Mike.